Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Greatness Glory podcast. Another casual conversation on the topics that I don't know what's going to be about. So I have Kevin here. And this time we decided let's just go with the flow and see what comes up. Namaste, Kevin. How are you?
Hi, thank you for having me, Isaac. I'm just gonna get started and jump right into it. What
Oh.
pisses you off when it comes to spirituality and the spiritual community?
Okay, let's say first what pisses me in life is the same concept or same function of getting pissed off for everybody when things don't go the way that I expect them to go. And this is, we can say, in a way, the human nature, ego nature, and they say anger is a result of your expectations not being met or desires not being fulfilled. For example, right now there is a insect or fly flying behind you, and me being a bit perfectionist, I was thinking, why the hell this fly need to be in the screen? It's not there anymore.
Oh, okay,
It
I
went,
see.
oh, it's coming back. It's coming back. Okay, so but getting into, well, spirituality and whatever, actually anything, it doesn't matter how wrong it is, it shouldn't piss me off. um no true enlightened being or evolved being really allows anything to affect them or make them angry or pissed off or whatever. But let's say, what is it that I dislike? What is it that I think it's based on ignorance? And unfortunately, there's not one or 10, there's a lot. And I think the basis of the main things that, um, as you said, piss me off is misinformation. I always keep talking about all these things, especially when you come to US, you go to West, a lot of misinformation and bullshit exists on so many things, needless to include religious bullshit. But when you talk to anybody, you use the word yoga. Most people think yoga is some sort of exercise or gymnastics, and that's not even one of the worst. You talk about tantra. You mention the word tantra. They think it's some sort of technique about getting more sexual pleasure. But I think when people think about it that way, the enlightened being sitting in a, I don't know, like a cave or some sort of ethereal realm, there's like, Jesus Christ. It's like, because if you go and really study Tantra and realize what is it about, and it might take you a few years of dedicated studies, like, who brought this idea to the public that Tantra is about sex, while mainly it's about certain method of approaching God and merging with God, in a sentence, if I want to put it. And Tantra uses so many things because everything can be used, or let's say can be redirected toward the ultimate goal. And sexual energy is nothing but your inner spiritual potential, in terms of, in form of kundalini, or the inner energy, the energy of your nervous system, ethereal energy, nervous system, chakras, whatever. So when the energy is in lowest possible way, when we talk about root chakra, it's more about survival. If the energy could get into the crown chakra, your consciousness could get there, you will experience oneness. And between this root chakra and crown chakra, there are many different spectrum of emotions or states of being, let's say. So, I don't want to get into tantra now, but that's one thing. So many bullshit exists. You see people do things in the name of yoga, goat yoga, beer yoga.
So
It's
getting
hilarious.
pissed is good then. It's part of the spiritual process, you're saying.
Yeah, I don't know, even some enlightened being or divine incarnations also used to get pissed off, really, even the ones that you study about them. And when they noticed uh, injustice and
Mhm.
bullshit, famous story is Jesus. And I cannot say I'm comparing myself to him. I'm nothing in front of him, but he went to the temple one day and he saw that the temple was converted to a place of business, and somebody is selling a goat, somebody is whatever else, and he got really pissed off and he kicked the sellers and like he threw them out and whatever. And no wonder why he got crucified, because I love this quote. It's from Hippocrates, I think. It says, "Nobody is hated more than the person who speaks the truth," and I think that's the nature of universe. It's been always like that, whether it's in science or spirituality. The person who speaks the truth and goes against the majority, even though that's the person who creates the most transformation or creates an opening for change, usually gets sacrificed. At least maybe in this age, it doesn't happen much because of the law and whatever, unless you live in a shitty country with religious stupidity or something like ISIS or Islamic Republic of bullshit Iran. And it came up, we were supposed to go with the flow. And me and you talked a lot about our experiences back in our home country, Iran, which used to be one of the greatest civilizations of the world. And um, I don't like to comment much about other things and other countries, but I always thought there were some countries that they were in some way pinnacle of civilization and art and many spiritual things. One of them was Iran. The ancient Zoroastrian religion was that a lot of evidence suggests that it was the first monotheistic religion in some way, and it's a very beautiful religion, very humanitarian. And Cyrus the Great was a Zoroastrian, and he was the first person in history who wrote the human rights tablet or whatever that is kept in which museum is it? Louvre? I
I,
don't know,
I
whatever.
think somewhere in UK, I think actually. Yeah.
Yeah. Anyways, so I was talking about like Iran and some other countries. I think same thing happened to them, and I feel sad sometimes. Like China. China used to be such a great country, and it still is in many ways. But in terms of like,
The heritage and the history.
yeah, in terms of like a spiritual heritage, the art, the really high standard culture, and the things that it offered to the world, then it turned to a communist country and whatever. And you know anyways,
See,
so
I see then the way you responded, I sort of want to argue. Okay, just let's argue a little.
yeah, yeah, it's
That having being pissed, getting pissed is a big part of spirituality. What if you're passive? What if Yeshua was passive with the crimes
I
that he
think it is. I think it's some way it is, as long as it's not some sort of like, let's say, anger in terms of compulsive anger. When you get upset about injustice, about bullshit, then you let's say you arouse some power in you to take action, at least for yourself. Maybe they say anger is much better than depression. Anger is much higher energy. A lot of time, if somebody is like depressed and gets angry, it's much better for that person to be angry than depressed, because that anger is that energy which we in Hindu sciences and yoga and tantra we call the rajasic energy, energy of movement. It gives you some energy to change, at least.
Yeah, and the point I want to make is that it's not that anger is an issue, okay? Anger, but as an emotion is completely fine in my opinion. Um,
Hmm.
it's violence. Just to distinguish violence, that's an issue, right? Like if you want to act on that anger and hurt any type of being. But
Yeah.
anger by itself as an emotion, if we don't judge it and go to its roots, which I believe is fear, then it could be very productive. like
Yeah.
like like
Good point, man. Like, good point. Two things actually are like that. And this is a very tantric, yogic, energetic, spiritual thing.
yeah.
When anger arises and when sexual arousal arises, if you do not get attached to it, it converts, it transmutes to a higher energy. And if you practice, you'll see it. It's like it's the energy, the vibration goes higher. The whole science of Kundalini, in some way it means the rising of the vibration, because like the more that energy comes up without you fighting it, it transmutes to a higher form of energy and finally into some sort of like ecstasy and like bliss.
Yes, I love that. And uh, with going back to the point I was making about, anger not being the issue, it's our perception of what it means culturally. And let me tell you something. Earlier this year, before I read a multitude of books on chronic pain, uh, I did not realize that anger is actually healthy. That given the mind body connection, there's so much research. Dr. Sorano's mind body prescription, book after book I've read this year, that correlates suppressed anger to all sorts of pain, ailment,
Yeah,
disease, as you like to call it, when it comes to balance. But what's interesting about anger, okay, as I'm learning to actually uh, express it, but first, like, creating that safety around it, because I feel a lot of us experience anger in an environment that's not safe, like especially growing up uh in Iran. Like I mean, physical abuse in schools was a big issue, especially in Jewish schools where minorities were. Let's talk about this openly, because I had another podcast earlier and I was talking about my experiences as a minority in Iran. And there's still thousands of minorities there that whose kids are getting beaten up every day, because the schools the minorities go to, they put the worst teachers, or the teachers they want to punish, they push them to schools where there's minorities, and they're often abusive people, physically, emotionally. And when you're on the receiving end of that as a child, it messes you up. It messes up your regulation. But there's nothing wrong with anger. The question I have: how do we express it in a spiritual way? Do we have any role models, any, enlightened, prophets or beings who walked earth and spoke about it?
for sure there are. Well, if something comes to my mind in a minute, I will let you know. But I wanted to say, when you mentioned not expressing anger, or let's say suppressing anger is unhealthy, it is definitely unhealthy. One thing I learned, which I'm actually trying to master yet, I'm not saying I mastered it yet, is that when extreme anger arises in you, you have usually you have two options: whether you express it or you do something stupid, or you suppress it. But there is a third option, which is redirecting the anger. So let's say that intense energy is created in you at that time of that arousal of that anger. If you were able to change the focus of your mind to a different quality, it would be the most healthy way to express it. Let's say if I get angry and my ego says, punch this guy in the face, I could express it in a different way. Some people turn it to some sort of, humor or joking, or some people maybe use sarcasm if they can, unless it's your boss or something.
Yeah.
Um, and some people can turn it into love. If you practice seeing divine in everybody, for example, whether you believe in Buddha or Buddha nature, or you believe in God in some other way, or Jesus or whatever, if you could see, okay, God is within this guy, and I can express this energy through a different way. I'm just saying, in my realization, that energy that is aroused needs to be expressed in some way. If you suppress it, obviously it creates issues. So if you can just express it in a different way, because I realized this multiple times. If I get upset in my workplace or something, and I just suppress it and shut myself up and say, "Oh, don't say anything, don't say anything, it's going to create trouble for you." Well, it's not good. But if I express myself in some way at least and say, you did this, it made me upset, even between couples or between friends. Let's say, Kevin, you did something that makes me angry. I have two choices: either I just suppress it and don't tell you for whatever belief or reasons that I think I am afraid of hurting you, or I don't want to ruin our relationship or something, or I could express it in like a stupid way, or let's not call it a stupid, in a destructive way, and like curse you and like shout at you. Or I could say, Kevin, your behavior really made me upset, and I want you to respect me, and this behavior hurts me. Actually, this happened to me a few months back. One of my friends, he had this trait. He kept picking at me and like ridiculing, and he used to enjoy it. And in his own mind, because I'm not usually a reactive person, he thought, oh, it's okay, let's just keep doing it, and we are close friends. And one time I get fed up. I said, dude, I'm not enjoying what you're doing, and please stop this behavior. And he stopped it, actually. I was like, why didn't I tell him sooner? For whatever reason, so it's a good way to express that anger, let's say respectfully, diplomatically, to the other person, and you feel you said it. It's important that you felt that I expressed it in some way, not necessarily by punching the guy, but I expressed it, and it gives you relief.
You mentioned reaction, and I wanted to ask what you think Yeshua meant by saying "turn the other cheek," because
Jesus,
if
yeah.
yeah, because if somebody like slaps me, okay, and this is, I'm protected by the law. If I want to defend myself, it's only natural that as a human I would react, right, and maybe respond in kind. But what do you think he meant by turning the other cheek?
Okay.
But
See, there are multiple levels to that statement. That's why there's misunderstanding about it. From the highest spiritual perspective, it's talking about a principle, not necessarily an action of being naive or not defending yourself. It's saying that if somebody expresses some violence, anger, hate towards you, just like he said before, that if you behave like all the evil people, then what's the difference of you and them? But if you were to not react but act, um, and one of my favorite quotes from Dan Millman, which wrote the Peaceful Warrior books, is his teacher told him, a warrior acts, a fool reacts. So react means that I am doing something in response to what you did, and I'm being compulsive. But what if I could respond in a healthy, conscious way? So if that person comes and slaps me, and all of a sudden I go on autopilot and slap back, then I'm also like him. I'm also trapped in the same cycle of karma. But if I can decide with awareness and do what's the best in that situation, which might even be slapping the guy, I'm not saying that's a good option, but at least in yourself, you don't act based on some compulsive reaction that comes up within you. So that's one meaning. The second meaning is developing love for all creatures and not creating hate and being forgiving. You might still need to do something about that person slapping you or doing something else to you, but not to develop that hate or anger or feeling of revenge. That means you're practicing to rise your vibration and get closer to God, which is your own consciousness and soul. And the third meaning of it also is, if somebody comes and slaps you and not 1,000 other people, it means there is a karma. There is a reason that you're getting slapped. If you accept it, and if you can not respond in a at least destructive way and say, okay, I got slapped, this was my karma is cleared out, it's serving you. But if you punch the guy in reaction, then you create another karma. So it's a high spiritual lesson. That's why a lot of people, sometimes from different religions, and say, "Oh, this statement is bullshit. This means like being naive and weak." But it's talking about the spiritual quality, because Jesus
Okay.
was one of the few people in Abrahamic religions that talked about deep mystical concepts, such as like developing deep love and compassion. That's why a lot of people compare him to Buddha, because Buddha also talked about compassion and importance of it a lot.
Okay, thank you. So, just based on what you mentioned, by turning the other cheek, I'm not reacting, right? But I'm acting, correct? You proposed, I don't know if there's the third option, right?
No,
Somebody
you know,
slaps you, you either
it's
react or
well, action and reaction. Here, the action and reaction is an internal thing. Uh, let's say if you don't get angry or do not react emotionally to that thing and then do something, you won't react out of that energy, that arousal of anger, then you won't create another karma, call it sin or whatever, I don't know.
well,
But
let's be
you,
clear, because we're not saying he didn't say if you get slapped, don't get angry, right?
I don't know.
No, there's
I
no
can't.
word of anger here, right? If you get slapped, turn the other cheek. So,
But
like,
imagine if like he doesn't also, in my opinion, mean that if somebody came and slapped you, uh, you can
despite
get
being
angry, but be like
angry,
this. No, no.
despite
Let me
go ahead.
let me. I don't think I'm very funny guy, but like, imagine you slap me and it's like, oh, okay, slap the other chick. It doesn't mean that obvious. It means like stay calm and don't react with anger also internally. But what you do outside, it's different thing, you know. And then this is getting even more deep spiritually, because if you go and read Bhagavad Gita, which is for some people again just like that slap thing, it's a controversial, and if you don't study deeply, you misunderstand it. Where Krishna, a god incarnate, which many Hindus believe is the same person as Jesus, it's the same being that incarnated, but I don't want to get into that. But let's say they're the same in some way. Their teaching is also the same in some way. So Krishna teaches to Arjuna in the battlefield. Arjuna wants to give up the war as a soldier for whatever reason that you can go study yourself, and just escape the fight. And, you know, just for people who don't know, Arjuna gets into some sort of cultural war between the tribes. And then in the middle of war, he finds out that some of his closest friends and even family members are in the opposite side. And says, how can I kill them? And then Krishna tells him, it's your duty as a soldier, it's your dharma to fight. And if you give up, you also commit kind of bad karma. And I'm not best at explaining Bhagavad Gita, but there are probably more than 1,000 different books written as an interpretation of Bhagavad Gita, which you can go read. But that's a different perspective of the same thing also. So to conclude, he's saying don't react out of some internal turmoil, some sort of getting confused. And then he also says what you do outside, it's not necessarily bad if you uh, just do your duty and mindfully, consciously respond to that situation. So again, my mind got distracted a little bit. I might not have put this in a best way, but the basic thing is, one time we discussed before also when we talked about karma, that it's your intention that creates karma. There is a difference between you doing something out of emotions and anger or some sort of negative emotion, and you doing it without being invested in the outcome. There is a difference between somebody who kills somebody in revenge and somebody who kills somebody in an accident, for example. Anyways, Bhagavad Gita is an ocean. Like you can go and read so many interpretations on that, and you get better clarification. I'm not expert on
Okay, so
talking.
thank you. So far we're saying it's not acting on emotions, not reacting. Okay, I think there's a hadith in Islam of uh, Prophet Ali, I believe, not Muhammad. He is there's an enemy on his knees and he's about to behead him, and he turns around the guy and he spits in his face. And he stops, he cleans his face and he walks around the guy like 7 times and then stops and, you know, as the hadith goes. And and they ask him why, and he said, just so I have not killed him in anger, you know?
Yeah, and there are many stories like this, and
Mm,
the actually Rumi's book Masnavi, which is a
mhm.
very thick book like this size, probably like over 1,000 page,
Yeah.
depending on the font size, that is full of spiritual stories in form of poetry. The first one starts with the second one or first one with the story of king that orders somebody to be killed for whatever reason. Then he goes talking about that this killing is not the same type of killing as when somebody killed the other person in anger or revenge or something like that. So there are a lot of those kind of stories,
Yeah.
and it's up to each person to decide what's right and what's wrong. I don't This doesn't mean that, okay, I want to go kill somebody, let me just kill him lovingly.
Or find it's the intention, yeah, because there's more people that have been murdered in the name of Abrahamic religions than anything else. So I don't really think um traditionally religions have done a fantastic job, or at least we've seen it modeled compassionately as Jesus taught it. I mean,
Let
you
me
look at
add
the world
something.
leaders, yeah.
When I said that this anger or reaction is something internal, if you were truly a meditator and you meditated even for a few months, not every type of meditation, but some techniques like the famous method of Vipassana, which was the
Mhm.
main public teaching of Buddha. And there are a lot of Vipassana centers around the world which you can go and learn the meditation. The basic concept of Vipassana is that you train your awareness to be non reactive to what's happening in your body and mind. You get to a point that if you come and curse me, the emotion might appear. And while a year back, I would have reacted to that emotion and done something, whether internally or externally, I just don't react to that emotion, and the emotion can disappear in 2 seconds and gone. And then that's one form of saying you became free of that karma, because that was triggered in you and you didn't react to it. And that mental emotional energy is released now. So you progress in your meditation. That's the whole concept of vipassana and many other practices. And we talked about witness consciousness, witness attitude before. That is the meaning of it, because you as your soul, spirit or whatever, you are just a pure witness. And when you exercise being witness, you get closer to that consciousness, soul, whatever you call it, and you become more free. So it's an internal thing mostly.
Okay, and I want to sort of reach a conclusion with this conversation, because if I get slapped tomorrow, I still wouldn't know what to do. I don't even know if I would have the presence of mind to remember what Jesus said, because my natural reaction would be like, defend myself. And I'm protected by the law. Like, why did you do that? Like, I have so many questions, right? And I think it's natural to react. It maybe even unnatural not to react, and
We kind of discussed this before. Sadhguru said this very beautifully, that eye for an eye creates a world of blind people, which
true.
is a concept in both Judaism and Islam.
Yeah.
And that's the difference of teachings of Christ
Yeah.
with those traditional man-made uh, concepts, that, okay, if somebody did this to you, take a revenge and do the same thing to him.
Yeah.
But here, if somebody slapped you tomorrow, when you mentioned, you being aware, you staying grounded, present, not getting emotional is the best thing. It's the thing that gives you real power, actually. See, even for martial artists or in a samurai tradition, probably the most important thing that you need to develop is that state of non-reactiveness and alertness and presence, because only then you can have real power. If you get emotional, then you're weak. Even Bruce Lee said, I love an angry enemy, because that's the weakest type of enemy, because he cannot think clearly, right? And
Yeah.
you watch some of these kung fu movies like Ip Man. Um, I think they demonstrated very well that this guy is fighting like 5 people, and it's like his face is like poker face, like, and it's like he doesn't have those emotions. Like not fighting out of anger. He's like present. Only when you're fully present, then you have power. Why am I saying this? If you stay present, then you know what to do in that moment. That is the best. You might have to defend yourself. You might have to kill the other guy out of necessity to save your family or something. I don't know. But not being reactive and emotional gives you the advantage, both spiritually and materially.
One meaning that comes up for me with that quote that Jesus said, turn the other cheek, is they were studying post 9/11, what sort of led to terrorism, global terrorism. And there was a panel of many theologists at UCLA for like 7 or 10 days. And then at the end, I was listening to their lectures, their conclusions. This is in actually 2001, right after the tragedy. And one of the conclusions was tribalism. You know, tribalism is, I am of this tribe, you're of that tribe, right? Look at like the Muslim and Jews, and today happens to coincide with a major peace treaty. I wonder how long this one lasts. And tribalism is basically those belief systems that you and I are inherently separate and different, and your great grandfather killed somebody of my heritage or bloodline, so for generations that blood should continue. To me, turn the other cheek means, what comes up with at least now is,
Tolerance.
looking beyond the belief systems, looking beyond the tribalism, and the one consciousness, the Christ
Oh yeah,
consciousness,
okay. Let me
right?
let me ask you this.
Yeah,
Um, yeah, obviously, root cause of maybe all the conflicts in the world is that identification with country, culture, uh, this gang, this religion, whatever.
yeah.
If you saw the whole world as your family, obviously you wouldn't discriminate, and you wouldn't think these people are better, these people deserve better, or whatever. And my question is, what do you think about like people following any religion, believing in anything, and not thinking I am better than others, my path is better? How can we get into that state of mind? And is that even true? Should we get into that state of mind to say, no, all paths are precious, all paths are unique, and everybody has a different path, and that's what they need, instead of um, getting emotional and say, my path, my religion is better and whatever.
It's yeah, it's that, see, that identification with me, I, right, is, I think, what this lesson to me is at least about, at least what resonates now, in that if I truly believe that you and I are one, okay, we run into each other and you slap me, if I truly believe we are both one and I slap you, then I've slapped myself, correct? Is this then not a lesson in self compassion? Being gentle with yourself, okay, if we are all reflections of one another, made in image of God. By the way, to be fair, Moses killed the Egyptian with a slap. But if you and I are made in the image of the only one, okay, and you slap me and I slap you back, I've slapped myself. So if I have self compassion, I would resist and be gentle with myself.
Yeah,
But that's
that
different from narcissism, right? Yeah.
yeah, I mean, that's a very good way to put it, but also that's not something you can just believe in, as you said, and then from tomorrow decide to, okay, now everybody is a part of myself. Then it becomes bullshitting yourself. It's an attitude that needs to be developed over time with inner practices and practicing tolerance and practicing love and forgiveness and so on.
I'll be transparent with you. My therapists have said that you have to be firmer with your boundaries. Okay. This doesn't mean not having healthy boundaries, but if everybody was to be gentle with themselves, because I feel like it's our harshness towards ourselves that's often projected, right? So if if I'm capable of such negative self-talk and torture, uh, then imagine when it comes to somebody else, it's so much easier to torment them.
Okay. So this is exact thing that I said. When you practice something like Vipassana, you learn to not react to your feelings and emotions, to become free of being controlled by them. When it comes to inner things, when it comes to emotions, let's say, there is no difference between what triggered it, whether this guy triggered it or whether my own thoughts triggered it and I did something. That's what it means. Everything is internal, right? You experience everything within yourself, whether that experience was triggered by something external or by you reading the news or just fighting yourself.
Thank you. And
That's
you
it.
know, my two favorite words in Sanskrit are karuna, compassion, and sankalpa, which is intention, which you taught me. And I think if we start every day with that notion of, with that intention of, right, aware intention of, I'm going to be compassionate to myself every day, or right now, or today, you know, if we all think like that, what are the chances of people getting into like road rage? What are the chances of people like abusing somebody else at work and causing pain and harm? Because it's the person who's not capable of self-compassion that becomes the biggest criminal. And there's a psychological explanation as to why that happens. But to me, I mean, there's many layers to that quote, and I think it's a wonderful, wonderful way of
Look,
life.
let's just change the direction and say something. You know, past few minutes, a cricket came into my room or somewhere, I don't know, and it's
I
pissing
can
me
hear
off.
it. Yeah.
Really, like I thought this is filtering the noise, and now I need to practice not to get pissed off by the cricket because, like, I was like, I'm recording a podcast here. Why the hell you came here? And obviously, universe sent this cricket so I can learn to not get pissed off. That's why when we were talking about something, a subject previously, which I don't want to include the details, and I said I just don't want to compulsively change the external situation just so I make myself good. I'm also practicing not to become reactive to whatever happens outside. If I just keep on going and change everything and everyone just to feel good, then I'm not a spiritual person. I'm not a meditator, you know?
Yeah. Well, again, may I offer alternative way of self-talk around that?
Okay.
First of all, I've had many gurus, one being Eckhart Tolle, and he said, if you think you're enlightened, try spending an hour with your parents in one room. And my main guru, Sadhguru, says the only way to be truly free, okay, of anything external that would annoy you, bother you, if you really truly want to experience being alone, because you could go to the Kailash mountains, crawl up in the cave, and some creature, okay, in your case right now, a cricket, some fly or mosquito can come ruin your meditation, right? Your opportunity at reaching enlightenment. So he said, the one and only way to be truly alone is to think of everything as part of yourself.
Yeah,
Okay? Now, then the noises stops. The cricket is part of you, the same
it
way you're talking to
definitely
yourself right now.
is. And I have experienced this so many times, and I don't have any way to logically explain it. Almost always, when you learn the lesson, whether it's not to get pissed off by your coworker or somebody or the cricket, um, it's like almost always the issue is also fixed. It's not there anymore. It seems like universe creates that to give you a lesson or kind of pay off your karma or whatever way you put it. And then when you learn the lesson, there is no need for that external trigger anymore.
So why are you creating this experience right now with the cricket? Right? If we
I don't know.
project our reality, right? Right now you're just having fun. Your higher self is like, all right, let me throw in some cricket sound background and see how this podcast
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
goes.
Maybe.
Hey, if you think of grabbing the bug spray and going back there, you're only human, right? But what would turning the other cheek mean with this cricket? Because it will
Okay.
drive you nuts all night.
No, no, no. You brought up something good that triggered a good subject in mind. You know, here's the thing. There are people in this world that they firmly believe there is no morality, there is no karma. They do everything. They kill everybody. They do all the things. Even religious people, some of them. On the other hand, and we talk about art of balance, right? Apply art of balance to what I want to say here. On the other hand, there are other religious people like Jains and Buddhists. Jains, they are so concerned, and I'm not saying they're stupid or something. Maybe I'm a stupid, but they're so extremist about not harming any being. If you go and search Jainism and Jain monk or something in Google, you will see it instantly. That these Jain people, because they think I might accidentally inhale some micro creature, insect or something, they put a mask and go everywhere. and some of them, they have a brush or something, they sweep in front of their feet and walk because they think, oh, I might accidentally walk on an ant or something. That's one type of extremist in my opinion also, because how much you can control not harming anything. And let's say another way, there are people who think if I'm vegetarian, then I am a better person than the person who eats animals. And I'm not saying which one is correct, first of all, but this comes also from missing one important thing, that plants also have life, and there are many scientific things that has proven plants have awareness and emotions, maybe not in the same way that animals have it, but there, you know about that experiment that somebody used to go in a room and torture a plant, and they connected some sensors to the plant, and they measured the reaction of the plant, and after a couple of times, if the same person walked into the room, the plant would react in the same way. The plant recognized the person who was torturing it. So here's the thing, since you mentioned it, where is the balance? I think the balance is in recognizing you do your best to be mindful, to be conscious, present, to not intentionally harm anything, whether it's a fly or whatever. And if the fly is invading your home and there are cockroaches or something, if your conscience say, I feel bad about killing the cockroach, well, do your best, but you still have to kill something or some bacteria or something to live, no matter what you do, your life is dependent on killing many things to live. But we just don't want to consciously do things that create more karma. So some people in some religion decided, I can live with eating some grains that are naturally available without going and killing a cow. That's creating less karma. And if you have that belief and it serves you, great, do it that way.
Yeah, and I think people, or at least me, I've you know experienced that in different stages in my life, and things change and are ever evolving. I think that's the nature of life. And going back to that quote, another thing that comes up, which is interesting to me, is that if you're not reactive, then you're still in control of your reality. An
Yes.
example that I heard recently, this guy was sharing on TikTok. He's like, he had $8 on him. He bought a chicken sandwich somewhere, and he needed some barbecue sauce. He goes to the counter. Is like, hey, can I get some barbecue sauce? And the guy's like, well, that's 75 cents. And he's like, look, I got no cash. Do you really want me to, take out my card and add the tip and stuff like that? He's like, yeah, you're right. Here's the barbecue sauce. And he's like, since he did that, I pulled out a $10 bill and I gave him a $10 tip. Not because he gave me a free barbecue sauce, because he said, I didn't want him with his bad attitude and the way he approached me to ruin my day. I set the standard. Okay. So if this cricket, okay, is gonna take control of this tonight, the next 8, 9, 10 hours, 12 hours where you need to get rest, how
Yeah.
can we apply that to this situation? I'm really curious. What is Isaac going to do really with this cricket tonight?
I don't know. I'll see what is the best course of action at that moment. I gotta go find my cricket traps that I bought.
Yeah, we're gonna name this episode the cricket trap. Yeah, the cricket,
Yeah, that's a good
exactly,
one.
right? Yeah, because if you kill it, then you're gonna feel bad about it. But then, it's justified. You need your sleep. If it's part of you, you may sing with it all night. Maybe
Well, to be honest with you, this happens a lot of time, many times. If I see a cockroach or critter, something, Most of the time I do my best to capture them and throw them out, but if I have to destroy them, maybe that's not the best thing to do, but I do it. I'm not perfect.
I think the answer is self-compassion. Whatever means that self-compassion, but not in a selfish way, in a way that is least harmful, I guess. What a great test of
Okay. Let's discuss one more subject since you talked about self-compassion before we end this session. Me
Mhm.
and you talked a lot about um, having compassion on yourself, being kind to yourself. And one of our arguments was, and I think it was a misunderstanding, not really an argument, was about difference between kind of self-sabotage and pushing yourself in a destructive way and like blaming yourself or just having self-sabotage versus just having dedication and discipline, because you might argue, okay, where is the balance between somebody who wants to be successful and works long hours and sacrifices some things like going to parties or maybe a little rest? Where is the balance between just doing a healthy way, just doing a healthy amount of that, and being an extremist and doing things that harm yourself? And this is one of the things I'm discussed in my book. But what is the point of balance between saying, okay, I need to push myself to change my bad habits and wake up earlier and uh, exercise and go to gym and build muscles if I want to have a better body? Where is the balance?
Great question. And I think if you've been privileged enough to be in a relationship with a narcissist in your personal relationships or at work, you really understand that spectrum. Because when you study psychology, and which is one of my passions, and you study borderline, okay, people who are hot and cold, narcissistic, who don't take any responsibility, they're always pointing fingers. These are character flaws. Some of these personality disorders, these are not things that can be treated with medication, through psychotherapy. In fact, the narcissist is so manipulative, a lot of therapists don't want to work with them. And uh, it's a greater pain of humanity, narcissism. Okay. What we're
Yeah.
talking about is a healthy self-love. So narcissism, you're asking like, what is that healthy balance, right? I think on one side you have the narcissist, on the other hand you have the victim, you know the martyr, the one who thinks, and that's a distortion, just like narcissism. I think a healthy, the way you're well balanced is by the way people act around you. Because even Sadhguru talks about how one who once one is pleasant inside, their world becomes sweet and people around them become sweet and pleasant. So I think when you're in balance with self-compassion, self-care, creating the space that you need, addressing your needs. The problem is when you can't name your needs, right? A lot of what trauma is distortions around what is it that I need. You may be
Okay.
angry, you may be pissed at that cricket, but the poor cricket has nothing to do with it.
Mm. Let me ask you this. We might have a different idea about the subject. At some point, we might have discussed that, okay, I am not, I don't have full capacity or, like, let's say, the desire to meditate for 2 hours a day. And I might have told you, yeah, but you need to push yourself if we want to make the progress, just as some martial artist or somebody who exercises or some athlete pushes himself or herself a lot to achieve some like high level of mastery in that art. And At some point, I think you told me, no, you should have compassion on yourself to not push yourself too much. So maybe for each person is different. Maybe for me, 2 hours of meditation is not pushing myself too much. For you is, I don't know. What do you think about it?
Yeah, well, I mean, yeah, everything is relative, but understanding that you also are not the same person every second or every moment. When you dive into quantum sciences, and quantum science tells you you're here half the time, the other half we don't know where you are.
Okay,
like
let's
like
not get so philosophical. What do
no,
you
I'm going
say?
somewhere with
Yeah,
it. Like where
right.
where where I'm going with the fact that even based on science, you're not the same person at any given time. Like you're always evolving and changing. Like I think we shed all of our cells every 3 years to our bone marrow. So how am I still looking the same? I'm just, you could say, an accumulation of the food I've consumed, right? Um, there's many ways of explaining what a human or being is.
Do you want to say? Do you want to say? I'm just predicting what you want to say. Whether I'm right or wrong. Do you want to say that at some point, sometime a day in the week, I might need to take a break, whether it's like working too much or going to gym or meditating. That day, I need to have respect or compassion on myself to not push myself too much. And I think that is the same concept that I put in my book as rest activity balance. Sometimes you might need to balance it.
Yes, and creating the space for that. But since you asked, the reason being, in my opinion, that the Isaac that's sitting here against Kevin a minute ago is not the same person. We just learn, right? As every second that passes in the present moment, given there's no future and past, right? Only the present moment. We're always evolving. So if I stop one day asking, what does self care mean to me today? Okay, and the answer may be different, then we are doing those what I call um, micro balancing acts that actually came up today in our conversation earlier, where
Mhm.
I'm finding out doing acts of micro balancing is what's really helpful throughout the day. That notion of, I'm going to walk through this designated doorway and I'm going to stop and check in with my body. Okay, my self-care, my self-awareness may look very different than you, but we both can agree as humans we're ever evolving and it's ever changing. The only thing that's constant in life is change. That's why I love I Ching, like the book of changes, which the ancients called the oracle,
Mm.
because I mean it's the coding program of this reality, possibilities. We live in a world of possibilities in the quantum field, like, and it's been proven by science. I mean, we have quantum computers. So then we as quantum processors will naturally are going to be different every day by day. Can we
Mm.
acknowledge that?
Yeah, since we brought this up, very interesting, some synchronicity, just some example from my life. Maybe for the whole past year, in some way, at least 2025, I've been like meditating and doing some yoga and practices religiously every day. And actually, I really feel bad if I don't do my meditation and practices. Like, very important for me. It's as
Yeah.
important as eating and sleeping for me. And actually, last few days, I gave myself a few days of rest because out of awareness in looking in my nervous system and energy system and whatever, I thought so much change. I felt so much change is going on, and I need a couple of days, 3 days maybe, to allow the change to integrate. That's a good example of uh, being sensitive. And we discussed about developing intuition to really feel what's going on within you instead of just doing everything based on some belief that no matter what, I need to do this, and if I don't do it, I go to hell.
Yeah, that's again, that's the self-directed compassion that we're talking about. Like,
Oh
if
yeah,
you go grab a bug spray tonight to kill this cricket, let's say, okay, you shouldn't feel bad. Why? Because that's what you need tonight in order to sleep. The important thing is that intention, that I want to get to a point where a cricket, an airplane, even a dog barking in my room won't disturb me. But to have unreasonable expectations of yourself is the problem. And to, in my opinion, at least, right? You're changing every day. So maybe tonight you don't need the bug spray, but tomorrow you do. It doesn't mean you're a bad person,
yeah.
you know, because it's the
Okay.
intention that counts. The intention is, hey, you may even go and try. I have a friend who's very spiritual, and she speaks. Actually, crickets are very sacred to her, and she always shares the story of how this one cricket jumped in her lap as she was doing a reading of some sort. She was in a state of trance, and she tells the cricket, she's like, listen, I love crickets, I don't want to hurt you, could you please leave? And she's like, Kevin, as if the cricket understood me, just jumped, bounced, and left, like, and I never heard it again, so it's an opportunity to try something different. I had a similar issue with the rat in the garage here the other night at 3 a.m. Yeah.
Well, the conclusion of everything we said in some way, again, I think is, as a last thing, just to not react out of some anger or emotion, and just be neutral and present and aware, and then just see what's the best thing to do at that moment, which is least harmful to you and others. Yeah.
I
Okay.
think it's so hilarious as you were talking, the cricket goes louder and louder. I can't wait for an update on this cricket episode.
Thank you, universe, for triggering me so I can learn to not get pissed off.
Yeah, in a very compassionate way, just noise, right? But believe me, like, it's enough to piss you off, and that's okay too. Turn the other cheek.
Okay. It was a very good conversation. Thank you, Kevin. And thanks,
Namaste. Thank
everybody, for joining us in this podcast. Till next episode.
Thank you. And don't forget, greatnessglory.com, The Art of Balance, the book, the audio book, and as well as the PDF. Do you want to let people know?
Oh yeah, thank you so much for saying that. I have the audiobook version of my book Art of Balance. It's available for free download at greatnessglory.com. If you go to the website and put your email address in the newsletter subscription, you can just download the audiobook, and if you want the Kindle version or the paperback, it's available on amazon.com for $5-6. Thank you so much. Please subscribe and like to motivate and support us for more.